Welcome to Challenge Accepted. I am Frank and I'm here with Thomas.
Aloha, everybody.
Today we're talking about that third episode of The Acolyte. This one was a bit of a look back, kind of giving us more Trinity, one of the things we complained about from the first episode that we wanted to see more of. It was a different episode than I was expecting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, let's get the positives, up front.
Yeah.
We'll break it down like we normally do. I'm going to get the positives up front, and then I'm just going to probably not hold back on what I didn't like about it. I think the biggest disappointment for me with this episode is there was so much haters online for the first two episodes, and I actually liked the first two episodes. I didn't think they were that bad. I've since gone back and watched them a few times, and I still think they're okay. Yeah. But this one is just fuel to that fire. It was like, where did we go?
That's something that we see across the board before we get into the rundown. People that are hating on this for all the wrong reasons. And so you want the show to like outperform that. And it's hard because then the show's at such a standard that's just completely unfair that they have to somehow be perfect because people hate on them. The one that did it was X-Men 97. Like X-Men 97 was perfect. So all the haters enjoy your haterade. We're enjoying a perfect show. And now that we have a show that had a stumble episode, which I'll get into it later on. The show, I think this is now mirroring already. But anyways, it happens. But unfortunately, because it's under this microscope, it will be amplified and it will be used as ammo by people who do not actually watch the episodes at all. And that's a real shame. I wish people still watch this. I think the next episode, I'm sure, will find its way. But this is definitely a stumble. That's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to be Marvel, if you're going to be Star Wars, if you're going to be DC, I mean, DC's had enough shit thrown their way already. But like Star Wars is one of those things that you really have to put a lot of thought and effort into. And you know that you're going to be getting some hate from it because of even what we've seen in the last sequel trilogy, right? So it's like, don't miss. Like if you're going to take a swing, you better make sure you're going to go out like a champ, and I'm not saying that, this is the end all be all, because again, it's episode 3, they can make it back, but wow, I felt like this kind of confirmed a lot for people who were just talking trash online. So yeah, let's break this.
My question for you is, we have Bob Iger now in Disney, and his whole idea is let's just go with what works. Let's not try anything new. And this Star Wars Acolyte is them trying something new from before. Mm-hmm. Just because it has an episode that you and me both agree stumbled, does that mean that we don't want them to try new things anymore for Star Wars?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Right.
The other thing, too, is like this was in production before Bob Iger came back.
Of course.
So it wasn't it wasn't like his decision. I mean, I don't think he could have clipped it. They had already filmed it. They had, put all this money into it. So it's like, you got to run it. But no, you got to take new chances. And I still love this time period that they're going with. I love the fact that we're going High Republic. I've heard people say, like, why didn't they just go Old Republic? Like, yes, that would have been sick too. I'm not saying it wouldn't have. But like, High Republic is a cool era as well. Like, I want to see the Jedi at the height of their power. We are in that time period, but are we seeing the story that would really kind of show how great the Jedi are? It's very confusing. I think, again, after we break down this episode, there's some details I want to get into because it feels like it threw in a curveball in the first two episodes. Yeah. For me.
Let me do the rundown real quick so that we could dive into. And I think it would behoove us to split this into positives and negatives too. So don't worry, guys. We'll get to both sides. We're not going to be... Okay, so here we go, and I'm starting the rundown now. We're starting 16 years earlier. May and Osha are both kids. May, we could tell already, is very strong in the Force, a little bit too strong, honestly. Sol and his crew are there, but they're in hiding. There's going to be an ascension ceremony. Both the girls are involved with that later that evening, and we find out that they are part of a hidden coven of witches. Yes, it reminds me right away of the Night Sisters, something similar to that. Yeah. They're teaching them to use the Force together. There's definitely a joint Force thing. So hardcore foreshadowing to what's going to happen in the end of this series that they're going to be using some joint Force stuff. Osha doesn't necessarily want to be a witch. She kind of wants to explore space. You could tell she has an affinity for mechanics already when she sees later on the Wookiee doing stuff. We see that the Ascension ceremony begins, and May receives a mark, sort of a blessing from her people, and it feels like it's maybe the power of the many in her, according to their chants. The Jedi's approach, and they say that they're concerned that the Coven is training kids in the Force which at this time is against Republic law. Of course, the Jedi frown upon that. They don't want Sith to rise. Osha wants to become a Jedi. She's offered that by Soul, and she's like, hey, that's something different. It doesn't, it's something different. Their mother agrees to bring them in the morning to the Jedi for a testing, which we've seen the testing done many times in Jedi lore. They are trying to tell the kids overnight, like, you have to fail. You have to try to fail. Whatever you think, say the opposite. So the next morning, when they're doing their test, Osha slips up and accidentally proves that she's been lying. And then, of course, that means that May was as well. Right. So it's clear as bell. She wants to be a Jedi. She's going to be a Jedi. She's planning on leaving. But in the midst of leaving, May is determined to keep her around. And she even tries to kill Osha and burns her room. We then see that when Osha gets out of her room, like, everything's falling apart. The entire coven was killed. And later on, when Osha wakes up on the Jedi ship, she's told by Soul that her sister killed everybody in a fire.
Yep. Time. Nice. Yeah, that was a pretty good description. Yeah. So, yeah. We're going to start with positives, right?
Let's start constructive. So I think one of the things that this episode is setting up the Jedi to not be right. I have a feeling, no, it's not as clear as that. I think we're going to learn that something happened in this standoff where the Jedi attacked. And the fact that May burned something, like, she's definitely troubled. She definitely burned the book. Doesn't show her burning the room, by the way. It just shows her burning that book of her sister's. So just because she did that doesn't mean she's the one that destroyed everything and killed all her people. Like, that doesn't make any sense for her. I think
it doesn't make any sense in this story. Like, okay, so she burns the book and she throws it in front of the door, and then all of a sudden, like, I can understand, like, the room and the door in front of it's like on fire, but then we see that Osha is trying to escape, and then the whole building is just exploding, and I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, like, exactly. How did that? And granted, fire spreads fast and it can be super dangerous, but that did, like, it didn't register in my brain very well. Like, things weren't syncing when I was watching that.
I believe that's intentional. I believe that this is meant to confuse you, because we are seeing it through Osha's eyes, who is like, what's going on? Then she wakes up Soul, who's the only person who's been nice to her, who accepted her for her decisions, saying, like, your sister, who you just saw burn the book that you trusted so much, is the one that did everything. And her sister's constantly been attacking her and stuff like that. You know how it is when you have a sibling. And so, she believes it and she goes with it. So I think we're seeing the confusion from her side. I would not be surprised if maybe next episode or in a future episode, we see May's side and the story's quite different.
Yeah. I did think about that too. It just, it kind of throws things off, right? Because in this episode, yes, we get the whole backstory of who Osha is and May and their relationship when they're younger. And we see the Jedi show up at this thing, and, it's like, why? They kind of feel like, why are you interrupting our thing? And granted, I know that the Coven is not supposed to be training kids based on the Jedi law, but it also is like, mind your own business. For me, it felt like, what are you doing here? Like, leave them alone. So that was already a weird thing. We've also seen in the previous two episodes that they were, it's like they're repentive for something. So you're right. Maybe we haven't seen that side of the story. But also, if you watch it from this episode, it also just looks like May's a dick, and they're, and they really were just trying to help Osha. And it's like, why is May going around in the modern day to just kill them? It's like, what the, it's, I don't know. It is funny. It doesn't really I don't know. I feel like it doesn't add to, like, the duality of it, seeing this story from two characters' perspectives,
So agree with you that that's not clear in this episode. I feel like they could have. So here's what I was thinking. I think they could have mixed this episode in with the first two so that we're getting this story as we're, like, meeting Soul. We say, oh, okay, she met Soul earlier. I think that would have been a lot clearer for the audience. Or mix this episode with whatever I think is coming up in the future, where we learn the truth of the Jedi. Like, what if when Osha is waking up, we already know that Soul's crew killed everybody at that place, and he lies to her directly? Then we're talking way different about this entire episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then you see all the inaccuracies of, like, her memory at it. And you can tell, like, there's something weird. She's like, what happened after she wakes up in the ship? And Soul tells her, oh, your sister burned everything down, and, everybody died.
And real quick, not to go too far, I hate to interrupt you on this, but there's a point that I forgot to make last episode, and I'm glad I didn't, because it comes important here. There's a thing where when I think it was the Alchemist or somebody was worried about the Jedis that came up, and they're saying like, be careful, they can control your mind. And I think it was Soul that just kind of played it off like, yeah, be careful, kind of thing like that. At the time, I took it in as, oh, it's the Batman dilemma, where many of the people of Gotham are afraid of Batman because of the rumors of what he can do, not the fact that he's just a guy in a suit. They think he's actually part bat or part demon. I actually have a really good comic book about that. And so I think that's kind of like the Jedi are just like, yeah, it's best if they think we're even more powerful so that it stops crime before it happens. But what if at this time, and maybe it's lost when they fall, there is a mind control ability where they could have wiped the memories of Osha a little bit.
Yeah, or replaced her memories with whatever they wanted to put in them. Yeah, that's a possibility. That's true. Yeah, maybe it will be revealed. It's just funny. It's like, will that save it for me though, or will it make it worse? Because I like Soul. It's like, I don't want him to be the villain in this, but maybe that is the way they're going. It is interesting. I'm trying to like backtrack a little bit here. So when you were saying like maybe this will kind of show the other side of the story, like we're getting this story first, and then we're going to get May's side later. I also would throw it out there that maybe it would have made sense to have both stories in one episode, so you can see the mirroring of like, this is how this went in her mind, this is how it went in May's mind, and that would have been cool to kind of bounce back and forth. But yeah, if that's what this is, and it's showing kind of like a replaced memory of what Osha is seeing, then this is just a very confusing place to put it.
You're so right, and I'm desperately trying to grasp one of the many examples that are kind of like right on the edge of my memory of like when they do this in movies, where it's like, oh man, if you saw what I saw, you're telling the main character, you would have known not to trust that guy you're about to go with, And so I think that would have been a better structure. And the fact that we're having this conversation is not a flaw against the acting or anything like that. That's directly into the director's hands. Their job is to set the pacing for the entire series. This was clearly a misstep.
Yeah, it was a very slow episode. Actually, let me say this first, though. I'm going to say some positives because I thought the set design was super cool. I thought the way everything looked in this episode was super cool. That city kind of in the mountain kind of gave me Lord of the Rings, but for Star Wars.
I did get a Rivendell, like Star Wars version of Rivendell, in there.
Yeah, which was pretty cool. And there's like elements of it that reminded me of Jedi Survivor. Spoiler alert for that game, but there's a part where you go up and you find this lost city that the Jedi first founded a long, like millennia ago or whatever. It kind of looks like that a little bit. So that was kind of cool. So there was aspects about it that I was like, all right, like I'm on board. Their Mother Coral, that she looked cool. She kind of looks like Darth Maul's alien, or like maybe even a Night Sister before they became Night Sisters. So I was like, that's also kind of sick.
That's a great point. Damn.
Yeah, so there was some cool things in it, but man, was it slow. And I was like, where are we going with this? And it never lands for me. And it just feels like, the cop showed up to the cookout just to like razz the kids because they had beer. I was like, why are you doing that?
We were both saying off mic that, we were fighting the naps on this one. It was a tough one to actually fully get through. I just wasn't invested. You haven't set up the characters enough for this episode to mean anything.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, wait, am I still... So are you fully just telling me May's bad, or are you trying to just convince me May's fully bad? And I hope that's kind of what it is. So when it flips around, it turns out it's like, no, May actually wasn't that bad. And she actually remembers the truth that the Jedi did kill them, that it makes it better. But then again, I don't necessarily want to have a bunch of bad Jedi. I don't think so. Not especially when it's Carrie-Anne Moss and not when it's Lee Jung-jae. Like, I like these actors. It just, it would be weird.
I think we're getting far too long in power Jedis. So you mentioned cops showing up to the cookout, that kind of thing, where they fully have good intention, but the way they've been doing things for the last 400 years have been untouched. So yes, they are definitely, I think it could have been a thing where it's like, something happened where they're like, it's better off we just kill everybody in this room. And like, sure, I'm sure Soul's like, no, we can't do that. That's not how Jedis do things. And Trinity's like, that's how we're doing things. We're going to see something like that. There's a reason that all these people hate each other, hate themselves in the future. The structure is so incorrect. Like, give us that taste now, because this is the first 3 episodes. Give me a reason to tune in next week. If it wasn't for this podcast, I might wait to binge these all at the end. That's where I'm at right now with this,
Yeah. And this is the thing. Like we talked about it. Like I really liked the first two episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I was in. I was like, this is cool. Like I like these characters. You know, I've seen so much flack for Yord online. Like he isn't my favorite, but he didn't irritate me as much as like the internet seemed to hate him. Like even with May and Osha, that actress was getting so much flack. Like I heard people say like her May's great, but her Osha sucks, or her Osha's great, and her May sucks. And it's like, okay, like I didn't have a problem with her at all. I thought she did a great job all the way around. But this episode comes around and I feel like it's just fuel. Like it's like, oh man, you want some more haterade? Well, here's a gallon. You know, like
yeah, it's funny that you say that now, because the older versions, I do think the May is a better performance. And with the kids, the different actress, of course, the kids, I think the Osha was the better performance. That's interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that going forward. That's a good point.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have that opinion, but yeah, I have heard that going around on the internet and stuff. It just, I just don't understand what the motivation was for this. Like, I didn't necessarily need to see this backstory yet, and I think to your point, it's true. Like, this could have waited way longer down the line. We could have kept up. We could have watched Soul and the remaining Jedi try to track down May, and Osha is still dealing with like, now I saw my sister and, you know, did I let her get away? Did I not? I rewatched that scene and everyone's like, she purposely let her get away. Yes, I'm sure that's probably what it is. Or maybe she's just a terrible shot, because it doesn't look like she's a good aim either, but who knows?
I think she would have just let her get away. Like from what we see from the kids, she's just clearly the nice one, you know?
But I have heard some theories too, where May is not the evil one, and Osha is not the good one. Yeah. And like there's a little moment in the beginning of this episode where she's holding that butterfly thing, and she's holding it a little too long. And then May comes in, and then she does it too, but also too long and a little bit too mean. So it's like
I thought May was the one doing it the entire time. I'm sorry, I thought May was the only one holding. Okay,
no. So it's Osha who's sitting down, right, and then she's at her hidden spot by the tree because she doesn't want to do ascension, right? So she originally gets the butterfly first, and she like lets it go, and then it starts flying away, and then she gets it again and like holds it, and then like if you look at the subtitles, it says warbling, and she's really holding it, and then that's when May walks up and says, hey, you know, like, Osha's like, how'd you know I was going to be here? She's like, whenever you're lost, I know you're here, kind of thing. And then that's when May goes like full evil and also does it, but longer.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're like, okay, to me, there's both evil in both of them. And there's probably good in both of them. Obviously, May is... in this episode, I think they painted her as more evil. She burns the book. She traps her sister. You know, but also she's more dedicated to the coven. She's more dedicated to like her mom's way of life. So yeah. I don't know what they're trying to say here. I don't know if they're trying to say like there is potential evil in both of them, or if they're trying to say like, see, May is really the bad one to try to trick us so that later on when it flips, we're like, oh my God, which I don't know if that's going to happen anymore.
So I think you nailed it right there, man. And it reminds me so much of Secret Invasion. When we're watching Secret Invasion, I know.
But that's the comparison, and we are on a bad track.
In Secret Invasion, but you remember our conversation so much was about like, who's a Skrull? Is Sam actually part of this? Boom, 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 boom. And it was so much like the reason you were tuning in was to figure out the mystery behind this and try to solve this. And then at the end, it was like so hindering on that mystery that when it just wasn't great, it ruined the entire episode, the whole entire series. And I have a feeling that's kind of like, it feels like they're trying to set up some mystery box now without giving us a reason to love these characters, any real interactions with them beyond the first two episodes, which there was some real good hope there, you know? So I'm hoping that they kind of, like this episode, normally, if you look at the formula, would be right before the penultimate episode, right before we get it. Like, so we have all these characters built up. We'd get this episode with a little bit more detail in it. And then we'd head into that, like prepare for battle finale, like those two episodes. Like that's how the formula normally would work with this.
Right. And I think it would have better been served that way. And I know people are like, oh, well, you know, because especially with Marvel, people are like, I hate the Marvel formula now, right?
Yeah.
Well, but the formula works. The formula works. And I agree with you. Like, had this been a backstory after we had fallen in love with these characters, we had seen them struggle in and out of like what had happened 16 years ago, to get it right before the finale, and you're like, oh, that's really what happened. I think that would have changed a lot. But right now I'm trying to think of like, what did I learn that I didn't know already from Osha and May? Nothing.
No, like Secret Invasion, it's just setting up more mystery box, and it's like we don't need that. We already had that from beforehand. This is supposed to answer that mystery box. Instead, you guys used it to double down on everything, and that's not enough to keep me invested in the series. So I'm hoping that's addressed pretty quickly. I'm here for it still. It's still a cool show. It's still very beautiful. It's just that this episode in particular did not hit.
Yeah, I'm wondering too for you. What about Carrie Ann Moss? Right, we get her back. I had no doubt. I saw it in the trailers. I knew she was going to be back at some point in like an earlier timeline. What did you think about what she did in this episode?
She was just the curt one, right? She was the Yord of this time, the one that's clearly by the books, and probably the one that actually pulls the trigger on them doing something bad that everybody else dislikes. If we remember where we meet her in the first episode, she's in a bar in like the outer rim area, or whatever. She feels like she's one of those Jedis that's out there doing. What would that be called? Kind of like the ranger service, right? Like out there, she knows the law's gray. She knows she has to do things on her own, and that might not jive with somebody that's more like Soul, like kind of like, oh, hey, I want to just talk nice to the kids and offer being a Jedi, or the other ones that were like repentant and like crazy, and even the Wookiee who's like, I'm gonna go hang out in the Forest for the rest of my life. By the way, did you know? I didn't know this until I saw a image about it. The one that was like meditating is what's his name? Tumen or whatever. Torben, yeah, from Game of Thrones. Like that kid grew up so freaking fast. That is nuts.
He did, but let's comment on it because that was going to be my next question. Torben, right? This is 16 years from when we first saw him where he drinks the poison, right? In episode 2. The dude looks like he aged 30 years in 16 years. Like, what is going on? He looked like a little kid on Brendock. And then we get to old one where May goes to drop the poison and he's like lost all of his hair, scarred. He's gray. Like, wait, what?
I know.
Those must have been some hard 16 years. And they also said he had been meditating for 10 of it.
10, yeah.
So basically, dude aged like, again, 30 years in 6 years. Like, what are we doing?
I know.
What are we doing? I'm sorry. Like, I just thought that was so goofy. And, you know, again, like, I'm such a Star Wars fan. I want to love every Star Wars thing. I want to, like, root for every Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't get over that. I thought that was very, very, like, I don't know. It's like they lost the timeline for that character's age. I don't know. It was weird.
I mean, it's unreasonable for them to ask us to be a fans of everything, but it's also unreasonable to hate everything for no reason. That's why we will always shoot straight down the middle and be open-minded about everything. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, you already know that.
Yeah.
And that's why we're being open with you now. It would be very easy for us to be like, hell yeah, this was awesome. If you guys disagree with this, you're crazy. Hey, by the way, Disney, we take sponsors. That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would probably have a Disney sponsor if we did that, but
we know we follow people. I'm not going to say names, but we follow people who are like, man, they sure like a lot of things. And then there was some strike stuff that happened, and we kind of learned that, like, yeah, some people do pay for things. And that's the business. But yeah, here we are today. I think it's getting more and more transparent how that stuff happens.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to bring up, and I completely agree with you on all that, is the way the Force was portrayed in this. I had seen some people who saw this beforehand, and they're like, okay, this is when this show is going to get really controversial. And people were like, now it's going to get controversial? Because it seems controversial from the start. But the Force, in the way that these witches portrayed it, what are your thoughts?
I real quick, it's controversial for actual Star Wars fans, not the bros with Twitter accounts that are doing nothing but tweeting.
Right. It's already been
actual Star Wars fans,
for them.
This is the real conversation. I just think it's a different interpretation of it. Much like religion, there's the same, for a lot of religions, they have the same God. It's just a different book that leads to it. I think that's what this is. I think the way they see a thread, it could be very much the push and pull. Like she says, oh yeah, they use it as a tool. We use it like this. It's like, you're still using a force push. You're doing the same things that all the other ones do. So yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think about it though?
I mean, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. Like, it was just like, yeah, I mean, sure. I like your interpretation because that was my feeling. Not your interpretation. My feeling when I was watching it was like, why do they need to try to come up with like a new way to spin this? You know, it's like, it's already cool. It's already mystical. It's already this magical thing, you know, that's greater than any one person. And then I liked what you were saying, though. It might be an interpretation of like how people see it, or like an interpretation, you know, to use a less yeah, I don't know, to use a less like in-depth analogy or metaphor, that the way people interpret religion. So I didn't love it, but I was like, okay, I wanted to care about this coven more too, maybe before I saw them killed. And I was just like, this is just weird. Yeah. I don't know like how I'm supposed to feel about them.
I thought like, oh, is this coven going to lead to the Night Sisters or something like that? The ones that are up in the hills. Like that would have been a cool little tie into the future. And that's something we discussed in the first one is, are we judging this show based off of what we want them to do in the future when the entire purpose of the shows did not be connected to it? So that might be on me for like expecting this coven to be more when, they just got blown up real fast. As cool as they seemed, none of them stood a chance to either May just, doing May things or 4 Jedi that are pretty well trained, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they seem powerful. They really do. But I'll be honest.
I want to throw that out there real quick. That one though, Torment or whatever. I know I'm messing that name up. He got controlled so fast. Like he had no resistance to that.
Yeah. I mean, which is a cool power. I was like, wonder what he was seeing when his eyes just went black and he was like, ah.
Is that why he has to go into meditation for 10 years? Because he's like, my mind won't stop chasing to the dark side. Something like that.
Maybe. Cool. True, for sure. Or I mean, after the door gets shut on Osha, I'm sure. What is her name? Indara, and Indara just starts hacking and slashing, and he's the Padawan, so he joins in. I don't know. It could be either one of those situations, but
of course.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, the Coven was just a little like, I heard people say that the first 2 episodes were cheesy and whatever. Like Star Wars has a little cheese in it, and I love that about it. I love that it's a little bit soap opera-y and like, it's like, oh, I love you, we'll never say it, and like all that, the Harrison Ford, the Princess Leia, the Luke of it all, like it was so cheesy if you look at it now. And I
the bad guy's like, their dad. I mean, like you're right. It's very soap opera. Yeah.
Yeah, but I loved it, and I thought the first 2 episodes of the show had that, and this just kind of got into this scenario for me that I'm like, maybe this is giving me CW vibes. And again, I want to like this show. Like, I don't really care if the haters are saying it's woke or whatever. I don't care about that. I just wanted to like it for what it was. And this episode, I was like, dang, this is a little too cheesy for me.
I agree. I fully agree with you. Yeah, it was a little too cheesy. CW's a good fit. But it's just so early on. So we'll see. Oh God, hashtag Yord Horde is trending. I guess there's people who are mad that Yord wasn't in this episode. So that tells you
really?
The fandom.
Hilarious. Yeah. Dang, you get one shirtless scene and then it's over. You got stands for life. Okay, there's one other thing I want to point out. So you also see above the city, you see the 2 moons in the background.
Yeah.
There's one that's kind of a blue shade and one that's an orange shade. When you see the Acolyte title card, that O has the same shades. So I think that O from the title card represents the 2 moons that are above Brandok.
That's a great catch.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to return to that planet then. I bet they will.
I hope so. I mean, maybe it's a planet full of like, like a force channeling planet. They have those, like Lothar was one of those. Exactly. Lothal was one of those. Yeah. Yeah.
Lothal's so cool. I freaking love that planet.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap this one up with a score and then what we want from the next episode. Score-wise, I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. It's a weak 2, if I'm being honest with you. There's so much more to go, and I just think this was poorly placed in the series. And then in the next episode, I really want them to justify I want them to lean back on duality, right, that we were talking about from the first 2 episodes, and show that there was more to what we saw in this prequel episode.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that will change my score. But as of right now, that was a tough watch. I don't feel like we've watched anything that hard for me to get through in a while.
Yeah.
This has got to be a 1 out of 5.
That's fair. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cats of Star Wars.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I think I'd watch Cats again. I
like the music of Cats. I
know you do. You do. I do not, but I still think I would watch that over this episode.
Memories. God, I'm gonna stick my head again. Oh, shoot. All right. Well, I think that's it for us this week, guys. Please let us know what you guys thought about this episode. On Thursday, we have The Boys coming out. And that is going to be hot. I cannot wait for The Boys. It's going to be really good to watch. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about The Boys. We also just got news that this season 5 is the last season. Yep. So man, we're at the end. We got to enjoy this one. I'm going to like savor every episode of this. I'm so excited to see what they do and if it's going to lead into some of the things they did in the comics. But wow, it's gonna be a good time, and it's gonna be a palate cleanser, I think, for us this week.
This particular week for sure. Yeah, and then we also have Game of Thrones coming up too. So House of the Dragon. So. It's going to be very busy for us.
It's going to be awesome. Also, we're still running the giveaway this month. We got a Fandango $25 gift card. All you have to do, follow us on any social media platform, comment that you'll be entered into our drawing. And then from there, we're going to select somebody at the end of the month. But make sure you're following us anywhere, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. We're on all of them.
Sounds good. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
I love